a kimono. Here you go. Woohoo! Yep. I knew it. Mm-hmm. Here we go. Not so good. Here she comes. Oh.
And that's Timothy.
Yes. Watch this guy overboard. There we go.
Everybody saw that. Good morning, Timothy. And welcome to the Japanese Politics one-on-one briefing. This is number 222. To everybody who is listening to us in Clubhouse and watching us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube, it's a pleasure to have you with us again. And of course, we've got Timothy Langley, the CEO of Langley Square, the longest-standing government relations and public affairs consulting firm here in Tokyo. Timothy, it's to you now.
Thank you very much, Maya, and good morning, everybody. Thank you again for tuning in for our 222nd, that sounds kind of significant, episode on Japanese politics one-on-one, where we talk directly with you. And if you have issues or concerns, or you want to embellish some of the issues that we've brought up, just feed them to Maya. Or can people come on stage, actually, Maya? Not really.
Excuse me? Could you say that again?
Can people come on stage? Can people
they can ask questions. Yes, they can ask questions on YouTube and LinkedIn, also in Clubhouse. They need to go through me, but yeah. I'll read the questions to you.
Ooh, what a horrible process.
Yeah. I know.
So today is May 11th. We have survived not only April, but also Golden Week. So last weekend was the beginning of Golden Week. We had a 4-day weekend. There was a lot of activity going on actually there. The Prime Minister made 2 overseas visits. He went to the Philippines, he went to Vietnam, 2 significant countries, particularly in light of this Trump tariff initiative that has been going on. There's a lot of attempts to coalesce, but you know, the British signed off a deal just on Thursday with the President of the United States. And so it looks like this is going to be opening the gate. There was some, in light of the fears of the 25% across the board tariff and automobiles and steel and aluminum, that sort of thing. It looks like that was reduced considerably. And England came in hot out of the shot. The yen this week closed on Friday at 145.38. A continuing 4-week decline in the value of the yen. There are a lot of reasons for that. I'd like to get into that a little bit more. But the yen keeps creeping higher up, which means that it's getting a little bit, the value is becoming a little bit depressed as a consequence. The LDP decided on Thursday, and more confirmation of it on Friday, that they're not going to support a consumption tax relief for the consumers. This is something we've been talking about for the last 2 weeks to try and prep the voters for an upper house election and to like the LDP a little bit more. The LDP has said in our manifesto, for everybody who is going to be running as a candidate for the LDP, we're not going to be promoting relief for the consumption tax, as has been proposed, as we've been toying with it, as we've been reporting to you on this show. And this is significant because the opposition parties want to showcase their positions as trying to help the downtrodden and the people and help the economy. And in particular, Komeito is very much wishing for some relief for their voters, for their constituencies. And so there's a little bit of a rift going on there. Bunshun, which is the weekly magazine that talks about a lot of different things, about politics, about society, about economy, about food, about women, about scandals. It's a famous weekly rag. It reported this week that the Prime Minister over a 10-year period had amassed a lot of money into his pocket. He didn't report it, from supporters groups, and this is an attack on the Prime Minister, not coming at a very good time. He's supposed to be the clean Prime Minister, the Prime Minister who is supposed to transition the LDP into something new. So it didn't come at a very good time. I'm going to get into a little bit of the details there. The surname issue, when 2 people get married in typical Japanese fashion because of the koseki system, The woman gives up her name. She joins the koseki of the husband, and there has been legislation being proposed that we change this and give the two parties the right to choose which name they want, or they can hyphenate their name, something like that. And then what do we do with the children? What are the names of the children? And that legislation looks like it is really fraught within the LDP. The LDP has decided it's not going to go forward with promoting that legislation, although probably it will hit a vote sometime in this legislative session. Just to remind you, this legislative session ends on June 22nd, I believe, the 20th or the 22nd. The Prime Minister is in town this week. He was in town the tail end of last week. Like I said, he was in Vietnam and in the Philippines, two very important meetings. He's not going to be out of the country this week. He had a state visit last week. He's got no state visits this week. So he's going to be totally focused on the legislation, on the consumption tax issue, and on preparing his party for the eventuality of the upper house election. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. The other issue, the big issue, the policy issue, is pension reform. This is a big issue. You know, when you hire people, when people join a company, they pay into the national health system and also the pension system. And LDP has proposed changing that so that it captures more people. It captures people who are not just seishain, but some people who are part-time workers. And it's caused a huge rift, not only within the LDP, but a huge battleground for many of the opposition parties too. And I'm going to talk about why that's important and why it's a big deal for us to watch that for the next couple of weeks. There's been a lot of discussion. It seems to be heating up more and more these days. We talk about it frequently, but it hasn't been a totally pregnant issue. But I want to talk about who is going to be the next prime minister. There was a piece in the Japan Times, I think yesterday or the day before, speculating about that. And at this point, it is just speculation, and I've got to describe to you why it's speculation. What is the timing of discussing who is potentially a prime minister, and what are the underpinnings there? So if you know those kind of keystone steps, then you can be in a better position to respond to people who ask you about the prime minister, or what's his name, and what's going on with Mr. Ishiba, and is there going to be a double election, that sort of thing. And then we can move smoothly into the Q&A after I finish on those two, or those maybe 7 or 8 points, and get right back into the meat of it. Maya?
Well, thank you, Timothy, for letting us know what we're going to learn about later today. And before we continue with the details, I want to say thank you to Kanachu. If you look for them online, please check for kanachu.com, and you can connect there with James at kanachu.com. James' full name is James Howell. He's very active on LinkedIn, so if you haven't connected with him, please do that and think about talking with him if you have in mind any projects in the fields of buying and selling real estate in Yokohama, real estate investment, and property management. The company is based in Yokohama once again, but James will be happy to talk with you, even if you probably have other things in mind. Thanks a lot. And Kanachu.com, remember, they are online, and you can connect with James on LinkedIn and also through email at james@kanachu.com.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, thank you for that, Timothy. Well, now let's go into the details. We already have, quite a few questions as well.
Oh, boy.
Right, get ready for that as well. So it's on to you once again.
Thank you very much, Maya. And before I get into it, I'm surprised in my daily life, I run into a lot of people who are tuned into our broadcast, Maya. And I'm surprised that some people don't know about the synopsis. So this is not everybody's cup of tea every week that they sign on, and it doesn't hurt my feelings that much when you're not attending. But we do convey what we talk about into a synopsis, a written synopsis, and we generally circulate that maybe 3 days after the fact. And if you can't join, or maybe joining is just too much of a hassle for you, you've got other things that are going on for you in your life, you should know about the synopsis, the written synopsis. It's free of charge. We're pushing it out on Substack, Maya, starting May 1st. We're going exclusively. Maybe we will put a tickler on LinkedIn, but LinkedIn is not serving the purposes of our audience. So we've gone full hog on Substack. Anything you can add to that, Maya?
Yes, I will add the subscription link to the description of the video on YouTube. So if you are not receiving the newsletter yet, but you would like to receive it, and the synopsis, of course, please check the subscription and subscribe. The description and subscribe. We'll be happy to have you on the mailing list. We're not going to pollute your inbox because we send one newsletter a week. And in rare occasions, once a month, it happens to be 2 newsletters in 1 week. But that's all we are going to do. Okay, so Timothy, once again.
Thank you very much, Maya. So please sign on for the synopsis if you can't enjoy the beauty and humor and the splendor of our weekly video podcasts.
Right. Yes.
So getting back to the yen, today the yen closed out, or on Friday the yen closed out at 145.38. And in the last couple of weeks, I want to go back just 1 month, it was 145 on this week. It closed out last week 144. The week before that 143. The week before that 142. So we always talk about the yen. It's kind of a thermometer read about what's going on geopolitically in Japan, economically. It's a good indicator. It doesn't tell you a whole lot. It's a thermometer read. You have to understand why it's doing what it's doing. And analysts this week say the Fed, the U.S. dollar, is actually enjoying a little bit of optimism. The Trump tariffs are beginning to make some traction. You know, we closed out with the UK just this last week. And other issues impacting the U.S. dollar are increasing the value there compared to other currencies. And as a consequence, the Japanese yen is taking a little bit of a backseat. And in isolation, you can't really make much out of that. But what's going on in Japan with the tariffs and the 25% on automobiles, and Japan's economy depending so much on automobiles, and not really making a lot of headway with the negotiations in Washington, D.C. We've had this second meeting. The third meeting will occur later this month. Mr. Akazawa will be in Washington, D.C. Since the British already signed a deal, probably Japan is next in line. I mean, in terms of just sequence and hierarchy. So there's a little bit of anticipation there. But the trade negotiations show some optimism with regard to the yen and the U.S. dollar and the Trump administration. So it is also further strengthening the U.S. dollar comparatively. And it looks like the Fed is intent on keeping higher interest rates, which means as a safe haven, the U.S. dollar is being a little bit more favorable rather than the Japanese yen. The Japanese yen is typically held as a safe haven, and comparatively, the U.S. dollar is looking pretty good. And then the interest rate differentials between the United States and Japan, the U.S. dollar and the yen, as that continues to increase, it actually accelerates whoever is on top. So when the dollar is on top, it accelerates, that differential accelerates more money pouring into it. So it's really a double-edged sword. And it looks like for the next couple of weeks, the yen will fluctuate between 145 and 147. Not a huge window. People start getting nervous when it goes to 150. It was 160 about this time last year, causing a lot of consternation. And so all we have to do is look at what the Federal Reserve policy is doing, what the Bank of Japan is saying, what their pronouncements are. You know, they have their monthly meeting at the end of the month. It's highly anticipated, and it does send signals. And between those pronouncements, the market pretty much dictates where we're going. And then always geopolitically, what's going on within the region, within the United States, within Ukraine, Russia, the Middle East. There seems to be some good news coming out of Ukraine. The truce apparently has been holding, and the President of the United States has somewhat insisted to Russia, you know, if you hold firm on that, we can make some progress, but if there's any breaches in this truce, then sanctions will follow. So it looks like there is incremental progress that's being made, and great anticipation and hope for some settlement, at least with regard to Ukraine. I'm less sure about what's going on in Israel and with Hamas. The LDP decided this week not to go forward with the consumption tax relief. We talked about this last week, that the LDP was toying with the idea. The consumption tax right now is 10% on all goods and services, except for food stuff, and that's at 8%. Given Trump tariffs and the fear that that's going to impact the economy, and if tariffs actually lock in at the end of 90 days, and I don't think they will. I don't think it'll be a 25% on all goods, 24% on all goods, and 25% on automobiles. The UK came out of that. They had a quota of 100,000 vehicles a year being imported into the United States, and the tariff that was initially threatened was 25%, just as it is implied for Japan, and that went to 10%. So I think that's something that people in England can live with. Both of them were very congratulatory, but the fact is that they made an agreement and they're moving on, and they're not in the target site anymore. And I think it bodes well for other countries as well. So with regard to the consumption tax, though, the LDP has been considering that. This week, they decided we're not going to go forward with giving a consumption tax relief. It is just too fiscally irresponsible. As you remember, the LDP passed the budget. Well, the Diet passed the budget just in January. Through January to April 1st, that was the deadline for passing the budget. They passed it a little bit late, but they did get it through. It's the largest budget that has ever been submitted in the Japanese government ever, actually. And most of that budget is being serviced by debt, by government debt, by the Japanese government selling bonds, more than 50% of that. So the LDP, trying to be the responsible adult in the room, is saying we can't start giving away more funds and more goodies to the electorate, because it's going to really bury us even deeper than we are already. And Japan's GDP to debt ratio is so astronomical. It is an astounding number, far exceeding anybody that's even close within the G20. So they are trying to dampen the expectations. On the other hand, the opposition parties want the electorate to like them, to get benefits, to get things that are going to give them relief for food and for gasoline and energy, that sort of thing. So they're clamoring to the LDP, we want you to reduce the consumption tax and do it right away. And if we win this argument, then people are going to say, well, the consumption tax fell because of you guys. I'm going to vote for you guys. The LDP has taken the hard road there and said, we really can't responsibly do that. The problem here with the LDP is not only within the LDP are there factions that say we should give a consumption tax versus those who say we need to be fiscally responsible. And it seems that those who are fiscally responsible, or at least neutral, outweigh those who are saying let's give some sort of relief to the population. The LDP is in a coalition with Komeito, the Clean Government Party, the party for the downtrodden, for the people who are not really making ends meet. They're the champions of them. They're in a coalition with the LDP, and they're saying, come on, guys, give them some relief. Release some of the pressure on paying the consumption tax and allow the economy to catch its breath a little bit. So there's a little bit of tension going on there. And as you might recall, ever since the death of Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, we had Mr. Kishida, we had Mr. Suga, Mr. Kishida, we've got Mr. Ishiba now. That relationship with Komeito has been somewhat weakened because of the the connections. They're just not there. They've already had a change of leaderships twice for Komeito, and so between leader to leader, there's not that affinity that is really required for a coalition to be really successful and in step. So there's some fractures going on there, and it's not just with the consumption tax. There are other issues that I'm going to get into that also indicate that there's fractures within the LDP that could be exploited, and the Constitutional Democratic Party, the largest by far opposition party led by Mr. Noda, has set his eyes on a 1-year reduction of consumption for foodstuffs. So foodstuffs now at 8%, he says just take them out, give a relief for 1 year, and let's see how that helps the economy. The Democratic Party for the People, a little bit more aggressive under Mr. Tamaki, is saying, come on, guys, everything should be reduced, not 10%, not 8%. Bring everything down to 5% and give people a chance to catch their breath. So he's, as you know, his party won really big in the last election. In October, they went from 8 seats in the lower house to 28 seats, a huge victory. And he's got his eyes on doing the same thing, not only in the upper house election coming up, but also within the Tokyo Metropolitan Government election, which occurs just weeks before the upper house election. So there's a lot going on there. I mentioned Bunshun. Bunshun, if you don't know it, if you ever go into a Japanese convenience store, there's a rack of magazines. A lot of them are girly magazines. Some of them are comics. Some of them might be Newsweek, that sort of thing. But Bunshun is one of the hottest selling ones. It's a little bit racy. A lot of people read it, but they don't tell people that they read it because it's a little bit on the anti-government side. But it is a long seller. It is consumed, I think, by lots of people, even though they don't want to admit it in public. But it has great articles. It has, scandal investigations, and it serves a significant purpose for this country because there is no real vocal opposition. The NHK is really dominated by the government. The government stories are there. And there aren't very many vehicles to talk about what's going on in the underbelly of Japanese society. You know, what did the prime minister actually do? What is the meaning of the scandal that his minister of state is involved in? You're not going to get that story through many of the press outlets, but you sure will get it with Bunshun. Bunshun is known as the prime minister killers. They're very effective in what they report, and it's generally very well sourced. They came out on Thursday reporting that the prime minister, through their analysis and investigations they've had, has amassed maybe $207,000 worth of support that has been unreported through supporters groups. And it has triggered an ethics insistence from the opposition party for the prime minister to show up and explain himself probably next week or the week after that, and to talk about, where this money came from and how it was spent and why didn't you report it and that sort of thing. The prime minister's office obviously has reported that all monies that were taken in were done legally. And in fact, if you think about it, over a 10-year period, 300 sanzenman, 30 million yen is, over a 10-year period, it's not totally out of it doesn't astound the senses that the prime minister would be collecting 3 million yen every year from supporters one way or the other, and actually being under the reporting responsibilities. So I don't know if it's a tempest in a teapot, but he does need to show up for questioning, and it will be very highly televised. But I don't think it's going to sink him. There are other issues that are going on, but with the opposition party, anything will do. We need to embarrass this prime minister so that it increases our likelihood of winning more seats than we have right now in an election that's just coming up, less than 2 months away. The other issue that the Diet is considering, and it's considering under a considerable amount of pressure, is the surname issue. we talked about this even before the year closed out last year, that it's going to be a hot issue. It's starting to boil up now, and the LDP has been impressed upon to deal with that issue in this Diet session. So today is May 11th. The end of the Diet session is June 22nd. We've got precious little time for this Diet session to end. And with the surname issue within the LDP, promoting legislation like that, it doesn't look very good, because there are so many people within the LDP. The conservative end of the spectrum is dominated by the LDP, as you know. It's the Conservative Party. It's the party of big business. Doesn't want to see this change, this huge change into the fabric of Japanese society, where women can choose to have their last name. They don't need, maybe the Koseki system, well, not maybe, certainly if the legislation was passed, the Koseki system needs to be revised. The Koseki system has been in place for a long, long time. And it is one of the underpinnings of Japanese society or culture, maybe you could say. It's one of the legal underpinnings. So it is a big issue. The opposition parties have various different positions on that, but it is identified as a battleground, and the Prime Minister and the LDP have been told, and they've been insisted upon, if you do not put this issue up for a vote in this Diet session, we are going to walk away and we're going to form a motion of no confidence against you. And we have lots of reasons to do that, and this Bunshun issue might be just another one of those, but they're trying to heap these on to create the valid argument that this Prime Minister is no good. We need to switch him out. We need to get a new Prime Minister in. And as we talked about before, with the election so close, it's really hard to switch prime ministers and get the benefit from the opposition party's point of view. Switching, kicking the bum out and getting a new one in there, you look a little bit opportunistic. For the LDP, from the LDP's perspective, they couldn't hold on to their prime minister. They couldn't push it through. They look weak. They look indecisive. It really hurts whoever is attempting to promote or prevent that, and given the timing in particular. So the more likely scenario is pushing this off until after the election. But there are some scenarios where a no confidence motion, and he's been threatened with as much by the Constitutional Democratic Party's leader, Mr. Noda, saying, you know, if you don't address this issue, I can't support you as prime minister, and I will support a no confidence motion. A no confidence motion in Japan cannot survive, cannot succeed without the active participation of the Constitutional Democratic Party. So his voice carries lots of weight. The internal divisions prevent a unified approach from the LDP's point of view, and they have decided, let's leave it to the opposition parties to come up with their proposal. So anybody, you need a certain number of people to promote legislation within the Diet, and I think that's probably 10 members. All of the opposition parties have achieved that. They can all promote legislation on their own behalf. And I think the LDP is suggesting, we're just not going to promote the legislation. If you guys want it, you promote it, and then we'll put it up for a vote. And thereby somehow escaping, you know, they're not motoring the issue. They'll let the population decide. They'll let the opposition party try and put that together. And if the language suits them, then they might vote positively for it or not. It's a very contentious issue. It is one that will generate a lot of heat very soon, certainly within the next 4 weeks. The Prime Minister, as I said, was in town towards the middle of last week, and he will be in town all of this week. There are no state visits scheduled for this week, but on the 8th of last week, we did have the visit of Prince Al Hussein bin Abdullah II from Jordan on a state visit. And the day before that, there was a state visit from Chile. The president, Gabriel Boric Font, visited Japan. So there's a lot of stuff going on with the prime minister, with diplomacy, with what's going on in the Diet. A state visit involves actually presenting yourself to the emperor, as well as greetings from the prime minister, and usually a state dinner. So there's a lot going on. It's not an easy job. I think nobody thinks it is, but with everything else going on, it really is a tough issue. You might recall that Joseph Nye passed away this last week, and the prime minister took time to send his condolences. There are a couple of guys, for all of us Japan hands, that we always look up to, who have really cut a path to make things a little bit more palatable and a little bit easier for us. I mean, the things that some of us are able to do, like this kind of show, would not have been possible 20 years ago. And there are people who have been influential in moving that ball and building this relationship, the relationship between the United States and Japan, but also diplomatically throughout the world. And Joseph Nye is certainly one of those sterling individuals. He passed away this last week. And so as this generation passes, the new generation of Japan hands, people who are on this program, people who are participating in finding out, and participating in Japanese politics and being that kind of lever between their country and Japan. It's not an easy deal, and it takes a kind of career of figuring out who does what and how things happen and why they happen the way they do. And so I genuinely appreciate people signing into this, but there's a new cadre of these kind of Joseph Nye caliber people who are in the environment, and sometimes you don't appreciate them until they've actually left. I think Joseph Nye was one of those individuals we all well recognized, as well as many others who have recently passed away. So we owe them a debt of gratitude, and I just wanted to mention that too. Similarly, the Prime Minister congratulated Chancellor Merz of the Republic of Germany. And you might recall that the Pope died in May. In April 21st, and the Prime Minister sent his condolences. We have a new Pope now, Pope Leo, who was selected, I think, on Thursday of this week. As far as I know, the Prime Minister hasn't sent any congratulatory remarks to the new Pope, but as far as the old Pope is concerned, the Prime Minister actually went out of his way to visit the Papal Nuncio here in Tokyo, actually very close to my office in Lokubancho. And this is, I think, appropriate and significant that the Prime Minister took time out to visit the embassy. So the smallest country in the world is the Holy See. That's the area where the Pope resides, and the walls within the Holy See. And they have an embassy in every country of the world. The Holy See does. It's called the Papal Nuncio. And they have an ambassador who is a bishop, the rank of bishop. And so the Prime Minister went actually to the embassy itself and expressed his condolences there. And I think that's to be said, something in his favor there. Moving on to pension reform, which is the big issue. It's the issue that will hit a lot of bumps this week. So on Tuesday, the Somukaicho, what is it? It's the Policy Research Council, has a meeting on Tuesday. They have about 27 members, and they talk about legislation that the LDP is going to support going forward. Whenever you have a new prime minister, he selects his cabinet, his probably 25, 30 people in the cabinet. The formal cabinet is 22 individuals, but there are other people that also belong to the cabinet. And he also appoints people within the LDP. There are 5 significant seats there. One of those is the Policy Research Council, and that is led by Mr. Onodera. So he is the chairman of this meeting on Tuesday. This Tuesday meeting will consider what legislation the LDP is going to be promoting forward. And the LDP rules, the internal rules, dictate that of the members of this council, it must be a unanimous decision to promote legislation going forward. There's a piece of legislation that's moving forward that's called the pension reform legislation to reform how people get paid into their pension, and it also impacts Kosei Nenkin and Kosei Hoken, the national health insurance. The two of them, people pay into it. So when you join a company, the company pays part of that and the employee pays part of that. And at the end of your term, when you retire, you get a bit of a pension, and then you get your health care taken care of throughout your career as well at a very reduced cost. I think Japan is well known throughout the world for their national health coverage. So this is undergoing reform, and they need to pass it unanimously on Tuesday. Kono Taro is on that committee, on that council, and he has already said, forget this pension reform. If you implement pension reform, that means that people who under the current terms don't deserve or cannot participate because they're not full-time, they're part-time, they're not staff workers, they're contract workers. They don't deserve pension reform, and if they want the healthcare system, then there's a different calculation for them. If you impose a wider application of that, many of the small and medium enterprises, which is the backbone of the Japanese economy, it's not the big companies, it's not the people who hire 500 people or more as employees. That's not the backbone of the company. The backbone of the country are the small and medium enterprises, and Kono Taro has always been the champion of small and medium enterprises. And he has said, I'm not going to do that to my constituency. So Kono Taro, as you know, has made 2 bids for prime minister. He will certainly make a bid the next time it comes up as well. And so he needs to stake a claim that these are the people that I protect throughout the country. So not everybody has that great kind of opportunity. He shares some affinity with Mr. Onodera. Mr. Onodera was also Minister of Defense. Kono Taro was Minister of Defense, Minister of the Digital Agency, Minister of Foreign Affairs. So he has some real chops. But this could possibly collapse the ability of the LDP to promote pension reform. The reason why it's such a big deal right now is because the Constitutional Democratic Party, Mr. Noda, has already wagged his finger at the Prime Minister and said, if you do not pass legislation that reforms the pensions so that more people can participate in it and that it's more sustainable over the long term, because everybody knows it's just going to go bankrupt with the declining population and the massive growth of people who are retiring. They need more health care. They're sicker. Well, they're not sicker, but there are more people that are, they're just in the declining stages of their life. They need more health care than they do when they're younger, obviously. If you do not do this, I am going to support a motion for no confidence. And that's huge. So the Prime Minister needs to pay attention to that. Kono Taro not voting for that legislation, and therefore the pistol is to the Prime Minister's head. That's not very good, but it could be something that benefits Kono Taro. If there is going to be a race for the leader of the Liberal Democratic Party and thus Prime Minister, Mr. Taro Kono wants to be, top on that list. The last time we went through this, there were 9 candidates, you will remember, not very long ago. And so I think that is very likely to be a bone of contention. I'll report on it next week, but just keep your eye on it. It will happen on Tuesday, but the news will begin reporting on it Wednesday, and it'll be pretty significant. When we first started the show, one of the points I brought out about to your attention was who is going to be prime minister. If it's not Mr. Ishiba, who is more likely to be a prime minister candidate, and when is that likely to happen? And I'd like to talk a little bit about that, because there is a time to talk about it, and I don't think it's the pregnant time now. But if there is a no confidence motion and it does succeed, then there's either going to be an election, or the prime minister is going to resign, or he's going to be asked to resign. So those are the 2 choices for a successfully submitted motion of no confidence, the prime minister has two choices. He can either resign or he closes down the House and then they go for an election. And the reason why that's important is because he would close down the lower house. The upper house has 50% of their members going up for an election on July 20th. So it's possible in the timing that's given that if there's a no confidence motion and the prime minister decides not to resign, that therefore there is an election for the lower house and they coincide to have a double election on the same day as the upper house. And that's one of the possibilities. But first, let me talk about who is potential as a candidate for replacing the prime minister. And they're no new names. It's, we had 9 last time, not in any particular order of preference or significance. The top contenders would be for replacing Mr. Ishiba as president of the LDP, and then there would be an election within the Diet to select the prime minister. And since the LDP is by far the largest number of votes, then the candidate that is supported by the LDP would become prime minister. So it's a different kind of race. The real contentious race is who's going to be the candidate for prime minister. That's selected by being the president of the LDP. So those candidates, we had 9 before. You're going to hear these names over and over again, and more, I think, frequently in the next coming weeks. Konotaro will be a candidate. Shinjiro Koizumi, Sanai Takaichi, Fumio Kishida, Takayuki Kobayashi, Mr. Hayashi, who is the current Chief Cabinet Secretary, Yoshimasa, and then the Finance Minister, Katsunobu Kato. These are all viable, respected politicians. They have received all of the qualifications to become prime minister, and those are the candidates. But let's talk a little bit about potential timing should something like that happen. So there are people that want this prime minister gone, and let's have another prime minister. But the logistics there are, let's say there is a motion for no confidence. Within 10 days of that succeeding, the prime minister needs to decide, I'm going to resign or I'm going to close down the House. And if he decides to resign, then the LDP will go through this same process of who's going to be the LDP president, and then that person will be promoted as the replacement for the prime minister. That's that's not an unlikely scenario, but I think the possibility is rather small. There are a lot of people that like to criticize the prime minister, but given the fact that the LDP is 13 votes short of a majority in the lower house, he hasn't done a terrible job. The Bunshun article on the amount of money that he's been able to collect, 330 million yen over a 10-year period, is not that fatal, I think. And I think there are lots of ways to either dodge it or explain it away or make some sort of an accounting for it. But those kinds of things will continue to occur. The more likely scenario is that the prime minister would say, look, you have no confidence in me, I'm going to close down the House. All of the seats for the lower house will now be vacant and we'll have an election. He needs to do that within 40 days when he makes the decision. So that's a 50-day period right there. And at the end of that period, then there needs to be an election. It's important to note that the seats in the upper house that are up for election, one half of the seats on July 22nd are 248 seats for the upper house election. And for Komeito and for the LDP, collectively, they have 142 seats, so well over the majority. So the LDP and Komeito hold a majority in the upper house. And if there is an election, not just a double election, just the election for the upper house, the LDP and the Komeito can afford to lose 17 seats and still be in a majority. In the lower house, though, they are 13 seats short, and gaining another 13 seats is a pretty big deal. Somewhat onerous, not impossible, especially with the way politics and the Trump negotiations are going now. But who knows by the time the elections roll about. So once again, prior to the election or following a no confidence motion, the prime minister needs to hold an election, and the upper house election campaign is 17 days. The lower house is 14 days. And right now, if there was a no confidence motion called, you have 50 days before that election campaign needs to happen. And let me see, there are how many days left for the upper house election? I think it's 72 days. So 50 days, 72 days, it gives you a little bit of maybe 22 days of give and take. So within the next 22 days, if there's going to be a vote of no confidence, it needs to happen within that window for this kind of calculation to work. Many people in the opposition feel like this is a good time to have a double election and to make the LDP have more than 13 seats a disparity. They don't control the lower house, they don't control the upper house, and then that makes the scenario for the opposition party or a coalition of the opposition parties to come in and run the country. So it's a tasty kind of attractive option for the opposition. A lot of people are spending a lot of time thinking about this, but no confidence motion, a double election, who would be a viable party president? It's somewhat complicated, but there's very little time for something like that to happen. So you need to watch what's happening over the next 20 days. It's going to be very, very decisive. And it could be that a no confidence motion is filed by June 1st. So today is May 11th. That's two weeks away. Something like that needs to happen. That means that the dissolution of the parliament must happen by June 10th, and then an election on July 20th, which would coalesce both of those election times to be at the same time. It is a possibility. I think it's very disruptive, particularly with the ongoing Trump negotiations that I suspect will go well for Japan. I think we'll get through this one and business will get back to normal, but a lot is going to be decided over the next 2 weeks, so please stay tuned to that. I'll continue to report on it to you. I hope it's not too deep in the woods or too deep in the weeds for you, but if it is, please let us know, and if it isn't, also let us know and provide your comments and suggestions, and also your observations too, because I don't have everything right. This is something that I do on a daily basis, but some of you are more deeply involved than I am, and I appreciate you being a part of this community. With that, Maya, I'll turn it back over to you. We can get into the heat and light of the Q&A session.
Right, very much so. Thank you, Timothy. We've got quite a lot of comments, which is wonderful, and questions as well. Thanks to everybody who feels like they want to comment and do comment. We appreciate that, and it gives us energy as well. Before we go into the questions and answers, I want to say Happy Mother's Day, because we've got this reminder from Hiroku-san. Hiroku-san, thank you so very much for always adding that gentle touch. We appreciate that very much too. And well, before we move into the Q&A session, I want to say once again, thanks a lot to our sponsor. Oh yes, to our sponsor, House. I thought I just got it out of the studio. It's here. House Inc. Please remember that they are also based in Yokohama, and they work in the fields of custom home design and construction. Also, they do commercial building construction. They can talk with you, and they have some beautiful works out there in the Yokohama area. You can see some of their works actually through the posts of James Howell. And if you're not connected with him, please feel free to connect. You can visit also their website where you can see what they do. And once again, just appreciate the work, the beautiful work, the beautiful houses they build. And their contact detail is webmaster@house.co.jp. You can talk with James, you can talk with Hana Roshizawa Hao as well. You will find the contact details in the description of the video on YouTube. And as I promised, also, you can find the subscription link for the synopsis of these briefings in the description as well. So, House Inc. is your partner. Please remember their name, and when you have a project in these fields, reach out and talk with them. And now we're back to the questions and answers. Well, there are quite a few of them. I'll start with the very first ones that came immediately after we opened this session, and they come from Cam. Cam, thank you very much again for joining us. Even though you're very busy, I know that we appreciate you being with us as well. So the question is, how is Japan evaluating the US-UK trade deal as a model for Japan-US agreement?
It's a little bit early to tell, thanks for the question, Cam. But of course, it's being carefully watched. You know, there are two ways you can go about this. Japan can accept and promote and pursue the Trump agenda, or as it is being invited to, it could come up with a different way. I mean, it doesn't need to follow the United States. It doesn't need to be browbeat. It doesn't need to be manipulated and pushed around. I mean, we have decades of agreements here, and the Trump tariff is beginning to erode that. This is a little bit of a betrayal. So why don't you come over to our side? And it is somewhat logical. I mean, Japan belongs in Asia. Their largest trading partner is China, Korea. This whole region is vibrant with trade and you know, all sorts of diplomacy, geopolitics. It's rich there. That opportunity solves a lot of problems. It creates other ones. But I think the better role and the friendship between the United States and Japan is too strong and too great, and underpins too many things that that sort of thing would happen. But they are being explored, obviously. There are a lot of trips and delegations that are going to Beijing. You know, we still haven't had that state visit from China. It was supposed to happen just before COVID hit. So there are opportunities to pursue that sort of thing. But I think the real game here is let's do a deal. Geopolitics, the trade regime since the end of World War II is fraying at the ends. It is going to change. And I think the UK coming to an agreement with President Trump is a signal that there are people that understand that. They have been struggling with it, although the trade agreements, GATT, NAFTA, all of these trade agreements have been put under a foundation of sand, and it's going to be disrupted. And I think what the UK did with the United States is a great signal, not just, and it's designed to be a great signal, not just to Japan, but to everybody else who is in the crosshairs there. So I think, yeah, it begins to open the floodgates, Cam. As you know, you're deeply involved in this as well. And I think it will be evaluated. And if the Japanese were able to mimic the same sort of success that the UK did, then I think we can get to an agreement fairly quickly. I don't know if they would be satisfied with that, but let's wait and see. And as you know, the bureaucrats that are running the negotiations in METI and the foreign affairs and finance, these are all top quality bureaucrats. The United States has their experts too, but Japan is no pushover. So let's see what happens.
Right, Japan is no pushover, which is also wonderful for everybody who lives here in this beautiful country. We continue with the next question. How is Japan interpreting Ambassador Glass's comments as a signal of US willingness to deepen bilateral economic cooperation under a potential second Trump administration?
Okay, is this also from Cam?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm not aware that he's made any pronouncements in that regard. I do understand his stance that 2% of GDP is really not going to work. It needs to be 3%. I understand he's made that in his confirmation hearings, and he will be promoting that in his role as ambassador too. He just came, you know, he's been here less than than 2 weeks. I haven't been in a reception with him, so I'm not deeply involved in what his policies are going to be, what he's going to promote within his administration. And I think we don't quite know. He's not fully staffed up. That will take a little bit more time. So Cam, if you have more to share with us from behind what that question is, I think the audience would appreciate, but I don't have much to add on that. I'm sorry.
Right, maybe further on down the road. Another question here is it me, or does Kishida look more and more likely that he might be considering running for prime minister? What do you think might make this more likely?
Who is this?
Cam.
He gets 3? Gosh.
Oh, he gets many more.
Oh, geez. Okay. Yeah, thanks for being a careful observer. In my estimation, if there was a race today, and even if you wait 2 or 3 weeks, Mr. Kishida is the top contender. He's got experience, although he left under some color. Mr. Abe did too. And in fact, when Mr. Abe left in a worse situation than when Mr. Kishida left. Mr. Abe left not just because of health issues, but he used that as a good excuse, but he was also suffering from some investigations, some political machinations, and there were a lot of knives out for his faction, the largest faction that people didn't like, that they were, throwing around so much weight. But he was under considerable strain. He left the prime ministership. Mr. Aso came in, and then within a year, he came back in and became prime minister. That was largely a result of him being the head of the Abe faction, which Mr. Kishida doesn't have that strength now, but he doesn't have as many of the negatives either. And comparatively, you've got potentially nine other people who would compete. They eat and erode the other candidates. So if there was only one other candidate or maybe 2 candidates, it might be a tighter race. But I think even under those circumstances, given Mr. Kishida's pedigree, he was the longest serving foreign minister, and foreign affairs definitely has a huge role in who's going to be prime minister. We're seeing that now with Mr. Ishiba not being really that engaged in foreign affairs, not being that adept in it, being more a policy wonk with regard to rural revitalization and also on defense issues. But yeah, I think there's no guarantee that we need to change prime ministers. The LDP, even if they lose some seats in the upper house, let's just say it's just an upper house election and there's a lot of rock and roll between now and then, but it's just the upper house election, 50% of the upper house goes for election, and the LDP loses seats. Everybody understands they're going to lose seats. So the LDP losing seats is not a demerit to this current prime minister. If they lose more than 27 seats, yeah, that would be a bit of a black eye, and that means that the LDP no longer controls the upper house. It no longer controls the lower house. Get them out. Let's put somebody else in. That would be rather dramatic. I don't quite see that happening though, and I don't sense that the population is that sick of the prime minister. We like to talk about, he's getting fat. He doesn't seem to be very projecting an image of leadership. But the Japanese people generally stick with what they've got and let him run the course of his term of office. So it's got to be much worse than it is now for people to actually kick him out. But never say never. It's politics.
Right. I hear the opinion that Mr. Kishida is the most likely candidate if there is another election of prime minister, right? But I also wonder, so basically because, it started earlier before him either, but he was the agent who kind of went through or went to reforming the LDP by breaking the factional system, right? And it happened because of the slush fund scandal. But even though, so I don't know, I think that the judgment is still out there, whether it was a good thing or not thing, a bad thing, right? What he did, exposing, illegal non-payment of tax is right, of course. But I wonder how much animosity there is towards him within the LDP for breaking the status quo, right? And yes, because it's not a small thing. Eventually, the party is still struggling because of, everything that happened, right? And you might say, yes, of course, it's not his fault. It's the fault of all those guys who got the money and didn't pay tax. But at the end of the day, the results are what they are. And we know that people are not logical beings. If you have been impacted negatively from what happened, inevitably, probably you hold, some animosity towards Mr. Kishida. So I wonder how to what extent that would play a role, if there is a need to elect another prime minister.
So that's a great observation. If you have just an animosity spectrum, the Prime Minister Kishida, former Prime Minister Kishida, would rank high in certain circles, but all of the candidates have their own level of animosity being directed at them. Kono Taro is not very well liked in Kasumigaseki. Sanai Takaichi, people say she's far right, she's crazy. Don't get her anywhere near power. Mr. Hayashi, the chief cabinet secretary, belongs to the Kishida faction. I like him a lot. I think he's terrific, but there are a lot of people that don't like him. They say he's two-faced. He's just playing the game to be elected and to be a favorite person. But it's if we just went on the animosity schedule, that would be one thing. There are some that have less animosity directed toward them. Takayuki Kobayashi, for example, from Chiba. I think he is a rising star and will be somebody that's going to be a contender. And you've got Kato Katsunobu, who is the Minister of Finance, a huge, powerful position. He seems to be doing a really excellent job. He is in the Kishida faction, and he could be a potential successor too. But a lot remains to be seen.
Right. Okay. And then, so another question from Cam, and then from there, I'll move to LinkedIn and the questions there. Well, the question is, do you believe the Democratic Party for the People is positioned for a breakthrough in the upcoming House of Councillors election?
Yeah, I think it's an open game. I think whoever is playing the social media card the best, and there are a lot of contenders there. The fellow who ran for governor of Tokyo, he's very skilled at that, and he is going to run candidates in the Tokyo election, the Tokyo metropolitan election, and the results of that come out before the upper house. So he could be making a play, and he's lining up candidates too. There are a lot of people that would like to be a member of parliament, and if you want to be a member of parliament, you're a lawyer, you're an accountant, or you have some say over what your career choices are. Not everybody does. You're a writer, an author, or something like that. To be a candidate for parliament requires you to have a seat or an endorsement by one of the political parties, because it enhances you to be an attractive candidate. You could run on your own, but it's just going to be a lot of money, a lot of machinery. But for the normal person, I want to be a candidate. Going to the LDP is less attractive than being a candidate for the Democratic Party for the People or for Ishin, right? The kind of maverick party, trying to expand their base. So it's an open game that I think you can't really dictate right now. Things are really in flux. We talked last week, Maya, about the legislation reforming the campaign laws and what you can do, because there were so many breaches this last time. But I think there's going to be a lot of rock and roll, and I think that the stakes are really high for the LDP. I think the LDP will still come out and do well if it's just the upper house, but I think the likelihood of it being an upper house and lower house, we're not going to know really clearly for another couple of weeks, but that could open the gates, and just everything is going to be much more difficult, much more expensive. So let's wait and see. If the tariff negotiations go swimmingly well and the prime minister looks good, I think the insistence for a no confidence motion would diminish, but a no confidence motion before those negotiations are finished would really kill the initiative on closing that deal, and the LDP would look worse as a consequence. So there's a lot at play here.
Yes, indeed. And well, basically, the non-confidence motion, we already have heard that Mr. Noda he has said that he's not going to support it. And I don't know whether his opinion has changed. I haven't heard of a change there. But if the biggest opposition party does not support a non-confidence vote, then maybe Mr. Ishiba and his cabinet do not have anything to fear.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. But I did mention about the Mr. Noda wagging his finger at the prime minister. If you don't move forward on legislation to revise and repair the pension system, I'm going to support a no confidence motion. So there are some threats that are being made.
Right. Okay. Thanks for that clarification. And moving to LinkedIn, we have a comment in the question from Manabe-san. So Manabe-san says, I have a good impression of Foreign Minister Iwaya and his activities, but what is his position within the LDP? What is his status after leaving the ASO faction?
Well, of all of the factions, the ASO faction is the only one that's remaining formally. And probably because I was somewhat involved in these kinds of machinations, the horse trading that goes on. As you know, there was a member of parliament in the upper house who hired me when I finished law school in Sendai. And he was in the upper house. And then I worked for him for almost 2 years. And then I went back to the United States. And then there was a double election, and he ran for the lower house. And he ran in a district that the LDP had never won a seat in, a 5-member district. The LDP had never won a seat. I actually contributed to the campaign. I stopped what I was doing in the United States. I came back here and worked on the campaign for 6 weeks. He won by a landslide, and as a consequence of that, became a foreign minister. In the current situation, if you're going to become a foreign minister, it's because of your chops. You can do the job. But also politically, if Mr. Ishiba wants you to be his foreign secretary, that's a pretty big deal. But it might come with some strings tied to it. And you can't get around Mr. Aso not being influential in Japanese politics at any level, certainly the selection of the foreign minister. But I would have thought that the Aso faction would have been more influential in picking, in fact, the finance minister, which the Aso faction has dominated for decades. Mr. Aso was the longest serving finance minister, and when he left, he selected his younger brother-in-law to become finance minister. So the Aso faction has held that pretty tightly. So there's a lot of stuff going on in the background. You know, if I'm going to appoint you as finance minister or as foreign minister or as any minister, I need to feel that affinity with you, and I don't want leaks of confidential information. I don't want, because I've hired you, it strengthens my potential enemy when it becomes time to be president or go for president of the LDP once again. So it's very difficult to say, but it's a great question and a great observation.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Manabe-san. And also, Timothy, to me, once again, it seems that the opposition cannot get their
act together.
Yes. So, because they all submit policies about the same matters, and all the policies are somehow different.
Yeah. Yep.
And even though it seems that all of them are vying for more power in the lower house, because that's where basically the legislative power lies, even though they do that, they want to have more power, to have more influence, they cannot get there. And it's once again beyond me why, after so much, or with so much willingness, to consolidate power, or maybe they don't have that willingness to consolidate their power, they are still struggling.
Yeah.
And of course, that's something that, even though it is not easy for the LDP, it still helps the LDP to stay in power.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you see that most frequently when it comes to be election time, and there are conversations even being held now for the upper house. I have a candidate that I want to run in this election district, and you, my different opposition party leader, you have a candidate that you want to run there. Can't we kind of make an agreement, and I'll let you run unopposed in a different election district, but this one is really important to me. Can we kind of horse trade there? And there is some of that that's going on. The problem, though, is that this recipe has been tried before and betrayals have happened, right? So I told you I wouldn't run in that election district, and then therefore you can have a candidate there, and I'm not going to touch you there. And then all of a sudden, when the roster comes out of candidates, their name shows up, or maybe they run as an independent, but in the background, once they get elected, they say, well, actually, I'm joining this political party. So there's a lot of that goes on, and it's politics, and it's dirty, and it's nasty. So there's a lot of history there. And that's why in Japanese politics, and I think everybody on the program understands this, it is really personality driven. We don't talk about the Liberal Party without talking about, obviously, Mr. Ishiba, but there are certain pinnacles of power that represent the factions that are still remaining there. But with the opposition parties, we always affiliate the political party's position with the name of the individual who is leading that, with Komeito, with Ishin, with Kokumin, the Democratic Party for the People, that sort of thing, because it is so personality driven. So people have foibles and biases, and they have long memories, and they have egos. So it's it is. You know, the other thing too is that politics is a representation of the culture itself. It's not divorced from it. So how politics runs, it is a different world. Nagatacho is definitely a different world from the rest of Japan, but it is all based and formed on the opinions of the general population. And so it's, you know, even when there's an election, getting one or two more seats is a significant deal. And that's why Mr. Tamaki with the Democratic Party for the People, to win so many seats was rather astounding. But once again, he's like LDP light. If you have been voting LDP, but they stink, you hate what they've done and the money and stuff like that, who else can I vote for? Not Komeito. I don't want to vote for those guys. And Ishin, those guys are from Osaka, and all they do are comedians and cook delicious food. I don't want to vote for them. Who else is there? The Constitutional Democratic Party? Yeah, but they're kind of wacky. Maybe Democratic Party for the People. It's LDP light. And if there is a coalition that's formed with LDP, Komeito, and somebody else, the more likely candidate there is the Democratic Party for the People.
Well, thanks for that clarification too. And with this, I think that you are free to go after 2 minutes, or maybe a minute and a half. Okay.
Okay.
So thank you, Timothy. Thank you very much for this. And once again, to everybody watching us, and especially the ladies in the audience, a happy Mother's Day to you.
Happy Mother's Day to you too, Maya.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Thank you very much for this. And we'll be here once again next Sunday morning at 8:20, as you already know. We don't know where Timothy will be reporting from on that day, but maybe it will be from Katsuyama again. And well, please remember that Timothy is the head and the boss, the big cheese of Langley Squire, the company that does government affairs and public policy here in Japan. So if you are in need of government permits, or if you're in the need of policy analysis, reach out to him, or you can reach out to me as well. I'll connect you with him immediately. So that's what Langley Square does. And thank you very much.
Sign up for the Synopsis.
And yes, sign up for the Synopsis as well. Timothy, thank you very much for dedicating all this time to the...
Thank you very much, Maya.
to the briefings. And now, once again, I want to say happy Sunday to you, and have a bright new week. And one more shout out to our wonderful sponsors. Here we go.
Yeah.